I know it's still August, but I am in full-blown fall decor mode over here. I'm loving DIYing all of the different projects I've been doing for my fall decor, and today is no exception. I've got a ton of fall DIY decor ideas for you, so stay tuned. This is Whiskey and Wit. My name's Whitney, and on this channel, I love to share DIY and budget home decor, as well as Cricut tips and wood builds. So if you love Dollar Tree DIYs like this video, or all things DIY in general, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Wit video.
So let's jump into the projects. This first one is a quick and easy little stager garland, if you will. And I did one with the fabric pumpkins last time I did Dollar Tree DIYs, and you guys liked it. So I wanted to give you an alternative, especially if you can't find those little fabric pumpkins. I decided to use these styrofoam ones that are packaged as picks at Dollar Tree. I used one of the 4-packs, which are the largest pumpkins, in orange, and then I used a couple of the medium size, which came in a 5-pack. I just cut off the sticks and then used a dowel needle to string up the pumpkins in an orange and white pattern, as well as adding a couple small beads I had in my stash as spacers. You don't have to use that, but I like to use them just because I think it elevates the look, and it also makes it obvious that they're pumpkins because you can see the grooves all the way around. When everything was strung up, I grabbed some scrap fabric in this orange kind of grid pattern, as well as this Dollar Tree little dog bandana. I saw it and I thought that would be great for little scraps of buffalo check for the fall, and it didn't disappoint. I just cut off the seams so the ends looked a little frayed and a little more rustic, and tied it on the ends. I finished it off with some big knots so everything was set in place, and this will elevate any vignette. I absolutely love how the buffalo check ties into my overall decor, and if you're not a big buffalo check fan, no worries. You can do whatever colors you want. You could paint the pumpkins like I did in the last video. I will link that for you if you want to paint those. They take paint really easily. Now, if you're more of a tiered trade person instead of a vignette, this smaller garland is for you. Now, I like this idea. It kind of gives me the vibes of a popcorn garland at Christmas. So I grabbed 3 packs of these smaller picks. They come in a pack of 10, so I had 30 total. And I took 10 of them because I wanted a third color, and Dollar Tree only sells 2. And I took some Waverly Antique chalk paint wax. I put it on the pumpkin, and then I wiped it off similar to how you would stain wood. And it ended up giving it a really nice kind of hazelnut brown color. So then I had orange, white, and this brown color of the pumpkins, which I really liked. Then I did the same thing I did with the last garland. I cut them all off of their little sticks, and I just used a little mug, and that helped corral everything. So then I had 30 beads, essentially, if you will, in 3 different colors. Then I did the same process with the dowel needle. This is one of my most used things when I'm making garlands. It is a long, a little bit thicker needle, and you can push it through a variety of different things. That's how I've made all of my garlands. You can get them super cheap on either Amazon or Hobby Lobby, Michaels. I will link some options down below for you. I created a pattern as well as adding some more spacer beads. Like I said before, I really like adding those, but you don't have to. And I think it really, especially for these small ones, make them look like pumpkins, because from far away they could just look like blobs. So being able to see the grooves on either side are nice. Then I tied a knot on the end, scooted some over, and then added a little bit more of my buffalo check little dog bandana, as well as some of the scrap Hobby Lobby fabric. Just tied it in a knot in each of the sections, and it really gives your beaded garland some texture. And also you can customize these to whatever color you have either in your garland or something you want to tie it to. I like it because I've got pillows that match that orange check fabric, similar textures. It helps tie all of your pieces together, especially if they're not from the same store. It gives you that cohesive look. So this would be great for a vignette, but I made it so I could put it on my tiered tray. It looks really pretty draped over pumpkins or mugs, and this I just easily added to my tiered tray setup that I already had, and it just added like texture and color, and I really like how it turned out. So a while back, I bought a ton of these unfinished rounds for signs, and I had a few left, and so I thought, hey, this shape might be fun for a pumpkin. I saw an inspiration piece on Jane.com they were selling, and it was a wood rounded 3D pumpkin. So I decided to take my miter box and just take a little bit off the bottom to start, so then that way this would sit flat on a tabletop or counter for my pumpkin. Once I got a groove going, then I was able to easily trim it. When you're using a miter box or any type of saw or anything that's dangerous, be sure to be careful, keep your fingers out of the way, and use whatever method feels the most comfortable to you. If you have another saw in your arsenal that you would like to use, definitely use that. Just always make sure that you're keeping your fingers and everything else, including safety goggles. Just be safe. Then I took the second piece, cut the same amount off the bottom so it would all be even, and then I cut it directly down the center so that I could create a 3D pumpkin. I sanded off all my unfinished edges and then painted all of the pieces with the color Pumpkin from Waverly Chalk Paint. I made sure to get the edges as well. Then to give it some dimension, I used a small brush and nutmeg brown, and I kind of dry brushed on some curvatures to make it look like the curves of pumpkins. So I went in slowly first with a little bit of paint just to kind of see where my line was, and then after a couple I got the hang of it. I completed that step on all of my pieces, both front and back, so all of the edges which will be visible were done. I also added a little bit to the outside edges of my pumpkins because those you'll see as well. Then my final step was to assemble, so I added some hot glue. This is Gorilla brand hot glue, which works on wood as well. It held up really nice. And I glued them into kind of an X shape so that they looked like 3D pumpkins. And then I just took a piece of mulch from my yard, chopped it up with my miter shears, and then added some jute twine to the top, and my pumpkins were done. You could customize these in a variety of different ways. I made some buffalo check ones with some Dollar Tree cutting boards in my last video, so you could do buffalo check on these. I like the traditional orange to give a pop to my decor. These are really easy to put together, especially if you have that miter box. It's really inexpensive on Amazon, and I will link it down below. I have been loving using a Dollar Tree spackle to create some faux mugs this season, and I also thought, could I make some faux pumpkin pie? I was in Dollar Tree last week and I saw this sponge, and inspiration just hit me that I wonder if I painted that orange if it would look like pumpkin pie. So I brought it home, I measured it out and cut 3 triangles. I just kind of freehanded it. And then I took the sponge and cut that in half as well, so it was half the thickness. So then I ended up with 6 pieces, and then I threw the rest of the foam sponge into a bag so I could use it for painting later. Then I used some orange Waverly chalk paint, this is the color Pumpkin again, to cover all of the pieces. What I really like about this technique to paint the sponges is that you get kind of a bubbling technique, but in the best way. It looks like pumpkin pie when it's baked. Then to give it a final touch, I used some antique wax from Waverly and just kind of dry brushed it over the top, and as you can see on the right, it looks like it's got that browning from the oven. Then to create the crust, I used some scrap burlap fabric that I had. If you wanted to do this all Dollar Tree, they've got some burlap bags right now that you could, like canvas bags that you could buy and cut up to do this. I glued it on the bottom as well as up the back, all the same piece. Then I trimmed it down so it just looked like the pie crust. And then for a little decorative touch, I used a scrap piece of the same fabric and did a scalloping technique to then glue across the top. Now this piece looks kind of big. I also cut out a large piece of the foam to create kind of a stager piece of pie. So I've got 6 little ones, and then I grabbed a second sponge. So if you're wondering about size, I made 2 different sets. Then for the last step, I wanted to make some faux whipped cream to go on the top, so I did the same thing that I've been doing with Dollar Tree spackling. However, I did add some white paint. I heard from a lot of you that that will help with the consistency as well, so I figured I'd try it. So this is about a tablespoon of water in the container as well as a little squirt of white acrylic paint. And then once it was the consistency of whipped cream, I scooped it out, put it in a just regular Ziploc bag, and cut out a zigzag pattern on the edge to create my own piping bag. Then I just piped on little swirls on the top of all 6 of my little pumpkin pies as well as my one big one. And be aware that this might be a day that you want to plan something else because I only needed about half of the container and your spackling will dry. So I decided to make another mug topper like I did in my Hobby Lobby video. Then I let those dry overnight to make sure my spackling was cured, and then I used my dowel needle and some twine from Dollar Tree to string up all of my pumpkins. I decided to make a garland, but I also thought that this could be really cute sitting on a dessert tray, entertaining for fall. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a hung up garland. I just liked that they were all hooked together so you could kind of intertwine them. Then I was loving the look of fabric tied on garlands for this video, as you could tell, so I grabbed some more scrap fabric that I had from that Hobby Lobby video, some buffalo check as well as some burnt orange. This also matches some pillows that I made, and so I just used the buffalo check and the burnt orange and tied them together in between each of my pumpkins just to give it some more texture. And I love these so much. It was one of those ideas where I'm like, this is either going to be terrible or it's going to work out. You could definitely use other things like felt, or I'm sure there's somebody out there that has done some faux crust, but I like this. I like that the burlap is really lightweight, and I love the technique. I think it looks just like pumpkin pie. So I've got this really cute garland as well as a larger piece for staging that would look really cute in a cloche as well. So I'm excited about this one. I have been on Kirkland's website a lot lately, especially because I just did those dupes, and I saw this metal pumpkin and thought I could easily make that. So I grabbed some floral wire from Dollar Tree, and I grabbed 2 packs for my large one. I ended up stretching them out so that it got to the size that I wanted when I unrolled it like a slinky, like you can see here. Then I took my second container and stretched it out the same way. You want to be gentle not to bend any of the pieces or you won't get a smooth circle. But once everything was shaped the way I wanted it, then I unfolded it like a slinky on either side, and then I just used the tail pieces to wrap around the center to keep everything together. Did a little bit of bending so it would sit on the counter correctly, and that one was done. I did the same thing with 2 smaller containers, but I used 1 spool for each of these smaller pumpkins for little accent pieces. Same thing, use the edges to wrap around the center. If you are having an issue wrapping it around, you can always cut a piece off and use that to wrap around the center. And then my final touch for all of them was to take a scrap piece of the wire, wrap it around a little Sharpie. You can use pen, pencil, whatever you have, to stick in the top to look like a little curly Q to make them look more like pumpkins. The last step was to spray them with some flat black spray paint to get the same look as the Kirkland's piece, and once they were dry, they were ready to be put out. I like the modern look. I also like the matte black, but you could spray paint them whatever color matches your decor. You could also add some jute accents to it as well with a mixture of kind of industrial as well as farmhouse. That would look pretty. They look cute in a little cluster of pumpkins like you see here. And also I might display the little ones on top of this thrifted candlestick. This is just painted black and it gives it some height above my other pumpkins. If industrial isn't your vibe, don't worry. You could do the same thing with some wired jute cord. I made a small one last year and I wanted to make a larger one for a bigger effect. So I took 2 spools of the wired jute cord. I unraveled it and then wrapped it around a paper towel roll, and that helped me get the size that I wanted. And then I followed the same process by hooking the center as well as unfolding them like a slinky to get the different grooves of your pumpkin. Did another curly Q like I did for the metal ones, as well as adding a piece of mulch from my yard. But if you don't have that or sticks, then you can use things like wine corks. You could do cinnamon sticks, dowel rods. There are a ton of different options. Also, if you happen to be out walking, I've gotten branches from our forest preserve as well that are just on the ground. So there's a lot of different options to create this rustic look. Another quick and easy pumpkin idea is to make over these white pumpkins. I shared these in my haul and I mentioned this is what I was going to do, but I wanted to share with you guys the final result because I really liked them. I just painted on some of that wax just like you would paint, but then I wiped it off just like you would stain. So it's like a paint stain mix here. I put it over the top and it really made those leaves pop. I like the muted kind of brown ivory color versus the stark white. I did it to both of those pumpkins and it really adds some nice, fun, rustic vibes to different vignettes. So I will be using these around my house. Here's a quick hack if you find some florals that you love at Dollar Tree. Get yourself a bucket and use some tape to create a grid to help you get everything to sit where you want it. I have seen this a ton for fresh flowers, but I like to do this with my faux flowers. You can create as many openings in your grid as you want, so you could even do just a plus sign essentially, so you've got 4 grids. I used my miter to chop off the stems of these pretty white muted florals, and I tucked them all around the outside. Then I chopped off the bottom and left one intact to create some height. I chopped off a little bit, tucked it in the top, and that will give you this really pretty dome effect without everything kind of falling over or needing extra picks of these flowers. So I was able to do this for $4. There were 3 different things of flowers in the top, and the bucket is $1 from Dollar Tree. They've got other options with buffalo check on it as well. You could also do this with a plain Dollar Tree galvanized bucket and add a Cricut decal to customize it to whatever you want. I've been wanting to make a door hanger of door tags for a long time, and so I saw these in the summer section and I decided to grab them at Dollar Tree. Every year, Dollar Tree has a variety of shapes of signs, so you could do this with whatever you can find. Don't worry if you can't find these particular signs. I peeled off the back and then I grabbed one of these calendars. I was so excited because I haven't been able to find these ever. This was the first year I found them. And I pulled off this thankful little design. I also have a ton of printables over on a previous Dollar Tree video, so I will link that below as well as up in the iCards if you do not have this calendar and want a printable from me to add to this sign. So I started by painting one of my tags all white, and we're going to create a orange and white buffalo check here. Using some 1-inch painter's tape, I taped off evenly spaced vertical stripes, and the reason I'm doing vertical first is because I have less vertical stripes than horizontal. With this process, you're going to need more pieces of tape horizontally, and you only have to place those once, so I'm just saving some time here. I mixed some of my orange Waverly chalk paint with some white to create a lighter orange, as you see here, and I painted all of my vertical stripes and let it dry. Once those were dry, I peeled off all of my strips and put them to the side because you'll need them in a minute. And then I repeated the same step horizontally by using a spacer, little piece of tape, putting them all out horizontally, and then using that same lighter orange color to paint those horizontal stripes. Before I painted, I went through with a Sharpie and just marked where the tape was before. So basically anywhere you're seeing those white stripes, it just helps me place my tape back in the future. Once that paint was dry, then I took those pieces that I put to the side, so those vertical stripes, and I put them back using my guidelines. You can also kind of see here where the white stripes are, but you're putting the tape back where it was originally. And so that way you are basically saying with your tape, here is where the lines overlap, and that's where we need to have a darker square. So then the last step is to just take that full octane orange paint, so you've got darker squares, and paint all of the areas where there is an opening to create a square for your buffalo check. I like to let it dry for just a couple minutes because I like to peel this off wet. So be careful, make sure you're not touching the wet paint, but I like this so that the paint doesn't seal down and peel anything off. And then I moved on to my second tag. Now this one we're going to do black and white buffalo check and going to do the same exact process except for just the top of it. I knew I was going to cover the bottom with my calendar art piece, and so I didn't want to waste my time painting something I was going to cover anyway. So I did horizontal stripes in a gray, and then I did vertical stripes the same way. Followed it up with replacing the tape and painting those squares black. So the same squares I did in the orange, I did black for this buffalo check. Then I had a really pretty area on that tag for where the sign wasn't going to be able to cover. Then I laid down my piece, used my fingers to kind of crease it along the edges so I knew where to cut. Got it to the place where I wanted it, and then I also trimmed off the top where there was the little hole to hang the calendar because I didn't want that on my sign. And then I just used some Mod Podge to apply it, and that part of the sign was complete. Then I created a quick bow for it, so I just took some burlap from Hobby Lobby, but you could use some from Dollar Tree. I took a longer strip, I flipped over the edges like you were creating essentially like an awareness ribbon, and then I scrunched up the center. You can just pinch it, you don't have to do anything too fancy, and then I tied the center with some jute twine. To add a little bit of extra oomph, I used a scrap piece of fabric and added that to the center of my bow, and then I hot glued my two signs together, stuck my bow onto my sign, and then I added some more jute twine so that I could hang it. The sign is so up my alley. We've got trucks, we've got buffalo check, just all the pumpkins, all the things that I love. Like I said, I've got some printables for you, so don't worry if you cannot find the calendar. You could print out a printable and do the exact same look. I ended up layering this with my IKEA eucalyptus wreath, and I really like how it softens the look, but it also is super fall, and I didn't have to buy a new fall wreath or make something for behind it. I just used what I already had and updated it with this really affordable Dollar Tree sign. I was really in the garland mood when I was making this video, and I had some extra pumpkins. So I took these pumpkins out of the package. These are the medium-sized white pumpkin decorative picks, so they come in a pack of 5. I decided to string them up just with some wood beads with this white twine from Dollar Tree. I find this in the automotive section, and it comes in a spool just like you would find the larger things of jute twine. Then after that was done, I made a variety of tassels. I took some yarn, I wrapped it around a Dollar Tree sign 40 times. Then I pulled off my loop, tied the top to create the head of the tassel, used another piece to tie off the kind of rounded head piece of the tassel, and then I trimmed the ends to get all of my little pieces. I love this terracotta color. I thought that was a really pretty muted fall color, as well as this ivory and gray. I tied them on to my string where my pumpkins were, and I tied them on instead of kind of stringing them on is because it allows me to slide them when I put them in different areas of my house to make sure the spacing is good. Then I used some more of my little dog collar as well as some of the burlap I used on my pumpkin pieces. So I was just using up scraps left and right here, which I love. Get it out of my stash so I can get some more stuff, right? And then I added some hot glue to the bottom of my pumpkins to ensure that they would hang with the kind of stem of the pumpkin up. I really like this because I've got a muted vibe in my guest bathroom downstairs, and I really like how this fills out the whole sign area. I've got a pumpkin patch vibe, so I really like the kind of boho feel of this as well. So if you're not a super traditional fall person, you can do this and have the muted colors, or if you like more traditional, you could definitely get the orange pumpkins, or you could do a brighter orange in your yarn. A ton of different options, but it's really easy to make these tassels and you can use them for a ton of different things. Now, I'm not one to make a ton of wreaths, but for fall, I had some old ones that are like 4 years old, and so they needed a refresh. I started with a medium-sized wreath form because it fit perfectly over this Hello Autumn sign I also found at Dollar Tree. I went outside and gave it a quick coat of this taupe color paint just so that it would blend in with the flowers I was going to put on it. Then I came inside and used my miter shears to cut off all of the little pieces of these white flower picks, also from Dollar Tree that we used earlier in the video. I grabbed 2 to 3 pieces and tied them together into little sprigs so that I could then attach those to my wreath form. I'm just using jute twine. I'm wrapping it around the bottom to keep the natural earthy vibes. Then once I had enough of the pieces, I ended up using 5 picks here from Dollar Tree. I tied the pieces on to my wreath form, and this allowed me to get the look I was going for. I needed them to be closer to the outside of the wreath form because I didn't want the Hello Autumn of the sign to be covered up. But I just tucked in pieces where I felt they went, and then I also took some more jute twine and tied any of the pieces that were going like haywire. I tied those to the wreath form as well, so it made a really pretty circle. Then I took some more of that Hobby Lobby burlap, made the same bow that I made for my tag sign, and I tied it right to the wreath form. I fluffed it, popped it to the side, and then I ended up hanging this wreath just over the top of my sign. I didn't end up hooking the sign because I could swap out the sign if I wanted to in the future. I just ended up tying my jute twine to hang my wreath to the same height as the Hello Autumn sign so that it hung like this. And then I needed a large wreath for my front door. So I took the largest wreath form that they have. I believe this is 19 or 20 inches. And I went through originally with some nautical rope, and I used 7 packs of this, but I covered the entire thing to have a rustic base. I just used some glue at the beginning and the end of the cycle so that it would stay, but you don't need to glue every piece as you go, especially if you wrap it tight enough. Then I found these 2 watercolor signs when I found that Hello Autumn sign, and I loved this truck, so I popped that off as well as the pieces from the other sign. Now this one had a sign that said sunflowers for the top, and I decided to just cover it up with the pumpkin arrow, especially because it goes the same direction. I just put some hot glue on it and stuck it to the front, and you would never know that the back says sunflowers. Then I used the hayride words underneath my truck, and then I decided to add some cotton stems as well as some pumpkins to kind of add some oomph to the bottom corner. I took 3 cotton stems, cut them down to size, and tied the bottom with some jute twine to keep it together. Then I bought these pumpkin picks, and I decided that the white would blend in with the cotton picks, so I decided to give them a makeover. I grabbed some of these Dollar Tree fabric pumpkins I had left over, and I just added them to the different ends of the pick so that it looked like those were coming out of there. And then the white still was blending in too much, so I just added an orange pumpkin that I had on hand. This one's from Hobby Lobby, but you can find smaller ones like this from Dollar Tree. So after I did a full Frankenstein makeover on that, I hot glued on my truck, my pumpkin sign, as well as my hayride sign, and then I looped in all of my little pumpkin picks, as well as some of the muted florals that I've been using. These are the darker orange ones, but I ended up tucking them in behind my cotton stems to add a little bit more orange to that corner. Then my last step was to create a bow for the last open space. I did the same bow I did before, so I did the awareness ribbon, pinched the center, tied it together with some jute twine, and then I did the same thing with some buffalo check. Both of these ribbons are from Dollar Tree, so they are there right now if you can find them. If not, obviously you can use any ribbon that you have. Once both centers were tied, then I tied them together, so you kind of had a 3D ribbon, and I tied that on to my wreath. I like to do this when it's hanging. It helps me get it in a better position, and I ended up tying it to my sign in case I wanted to switch out any colors in the future. And here is this wreath. Now there are a lot of moving parts. This wreath is probably $15-ish. However, I really think that it looks a lot more expensive than that. You can customize the colors and the ribbons to what you want. And if there's other signs at Dollar Tree you like, you could easily use that nautical rope base for a lot of different options.
That's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, let me know down in the comments your favorite project I did today. I love hearing from you guys, and it helps me figure out what I'm gonna create for you in my next videos. Also, if you are new here and have missed my fall content up to this point, you are missing out, so be sure to check out my full fall playlist, as well as the videos I will link on the screen for you at the end. I've got a ton of fall content, so if you are just now getting into DIYing, don't worry, I'm here. You can catch up, check out those videos.
Hey Finn, are you having fun with Mom's extra fabric? Did we give you a toga or a sheath, I guess? Is that fun? Toga, toga. Finn, can you turn around? Bye-bye.
And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!